Alright, so I've seen a lot of stories and YouTube videos on other people's epilepsy stories, so I figured I would do one of my own. A lot of my friends and a lot of people that I know don't really know where my epilepsy came from or how it started, so I wanted to advocate and get my story out there. A lot of people see me as like the strong-willed type, so I want to help other people the best way I know how, and that's talking. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about where it started and how it started and a little bit about what epilepsy is. Try to ignore the fact that I'm going to pause a lot, and if I stutter, it's an after effect of my medication and my seizures. It wasn't always this way, but it's nothing I can do about it now. It comes with the territory. Alright, so in October of 2008, I had my first seizure. I was working at Subway in Virginia, and I was making a chicken bacon ranch. I'll never forget it. And I guess from what I was told, I fell over and hit my head on the tile floor, and I guess I bit my tongue because there was blood coming out of my mouth, and my tongue was really swollen later. And my assistant manager rushed around the counter to pick me up and realized that I was convulsing on the ground, so they called 911. The EMTs came and couldn't get me conscious there, so they took me to the hospital. The first time I had consciousness was in the back of the ambulance, and I was completely freaked out. I remember waking up and looking at the lady and seeing the IVs running up my arms, and I see my car driving behind the ambulance, and I was like, oh my God, what the F's going on? And the lady said, you had a seizure. And I was like, are you kidding? And she said, no, ma'am, calm down, it's okay. And then I passed back out. And the next thing I remember is I'm waking up, and my best friend and my mom and my godmother and all these people are in this room, and I'm in the hospital, but I don't really know what's going on, and it's probably one of the freakiest moments of my life. Two of the worst parts was that nothing really happened to lead me to believe that I was going to be really sick that day. I had a little cold that day, but I wasn't really sick, and I hadn't really been sick before that. I had previously gotten diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but later we were also led to believe that was a misdiagnosis, that the depression that I had received was actually the brain waves that led to my epilepsy. So I was never really bipolar, it was the epilepsy, and I hadn't just had a seizure yet, so that's kind of unfortunate. So I got misdiagnosed and got put on the wrong medication. I was on Zoloft, and I was taking Xanax. So the two medications put together are what actually caused my first two seizures, which, I mean, in retrospect is good because we never would have found out that way. It would have been something else. I would have eventually had one anyway. The other bad part was when we went to the hospital the first time, the doctors were like, we don't know why she's having them, we don't understand, but it's not really a cause for concern, don't worry about it, you don't really need to go see anybody, it's probably just a one-time thing, these things happen. I didn't really understand what that meant. What do you mean these things just happen? I'm 19 years old, these things have never just happened, and I don't have any friends that these things just happen to, so I don't know. But we took their word for it. I slept all day the next day, my body hurt really bad, and we kind of just let it go. I was fine until about 2.5 months later when I went back to Subway after an exam, and I was eating in the booth and had another seizure. They called the ambulance again. I woke up in the hospital again, and they still didn't have any answers again. So this time, they gave us the number to a neurologist and said, if you feel it necessary, you can follow up. So we did. But I didn't really like the lady. She made all these empty promises, like doctors tend to do. And she said she was going to run all these tests, and she never did. The only thing that she probably did good for me was switch my medication. She told me to stop taking the Xanax, and she put me on Lamictal. Lamictal is an anticonvulsant or anti-seizure medication. And also prescribed me to a psychologist in case I needed a refill on anything, so I didn't have to go back to her office. Well, needless to say, I tried to schedule a couple of appointments to get my MRIs done or my EEGs done, and she didn't really follow up on anything, so I never went back to her. It took me about 1.5 years to find a neurologist that I actually liked, because at this point it was middle of 2009, and so I just kept going back to the psychologist, and she switched my medication another time, probably about 2 more times. I don't remember all of the medications that I was on, but I think one of them was Celexa. I didn't like Celexa because it made me very zombie-like. I didn't want to do anything. I couldn't do anything. I didn't like Lamictal because it just didn't do anything for my moods. And with epilepsy, I tended to get a little depressed. So I had about 2 more seizures, and then finally I found a neurologist that I liked. Unfortunately, in the beginning, he wasn't too keen on the idea that I had epilepsy. He said that I didn't. He said they were just fainting spells. But he said that we could run an EEG and an MRI and even a CAT scan if we needed to, just to humor me. We even did all sorts of blood tests because my mom has thyroid problems and there's diabetes and there's all these other things that could cause seizures with a mixture of other things, supposedly anyway. I don't really know. But so I'm at work. I sit behind a desk at this point. It's 2010, and a week before my EEG, I have another seizure at work again. I wake up. I was on the phone. Then all of a sudden, there's 3 EMTs and a whole bunch of my coworkers standing around me. I'd had another seizure. I wake up and I just start crying. I can't believe I have another seizure. I was doing so good. At this point, it had been about 4 or 5 months. And that was really good for me. They pricked my finger, checked my blood sugar. That was fine. It wasn't because I hadn't eaten. They didn't know why. They couldn't tell me anything. They asked me if I wanted to go to the hospital. I told them no. I was sick of paying $100 bills to go to the hospital for them to tell me nothing. So I got a ride home, and I called my doctor that evening and told him that I needed my EEG sooner rather than later. So I went the next day. The cool thing about the EEG is they hook you up to all these machines and they put these electrodes all over your head. And they try to, well, this is the not cool part, they try to induce a seizure. Now, it's monitored, so that's not really a bad thing. They're trying to figure out if you have it or not. Epilepsy is basically abnormal brain waves. So they have all these things hooked up to your head to see if you have these abnormal brain waves or if not, you don't. And they're, giving flashing lights and all these sounds. And while they're trying to induce this seizure, they check your brain waves while they're doing all these different things to see how your brain reacts and if you're going to have a seizure. Because your brain actually gives the brain waves before the seizure happens or when it might happen. But you don't always have a seizure every time. Because the neurons in your brain will misfire, but they don't misfire every time you give the abnormal brainwave. So I go for my EEG. Only lasts about 30 minutes. Sometimes it can take up to 2 hours, depending how extensive they need to go into detail. And they tell me it'll be a couple days. They call me the next day at work. I'm thinking it's good news. No, it's not. They tell me I have epilepsy. Perfect. So they tell me to come into the office in a couple days because they got to go over medication and things like that. I take my mom with me. We go. My mom's hysterical. I'm betting on the worst. So he tells me that we're going to start on Topamax. We're starting a brand new drug. We're going to start this process all over. Fine with me. So we do. And I've been on Topamax ever since. And I haven't had a seizure ever since. It's been 1 year and 6 months. Well, it'll be 1 year and 6 months on the 18th. But I'm close enough. And I'm really excited. I don't know what I would do without the people around me. And I don't know what I would do without my family and the doctors. But at the same time, I don't want to live like this forever. Every day I wake up scared that I'm going to have a seizure. I lost my license for 6 months because in Virginia you can't drive for 6 months after an episode, which is what they call a seizure or a loss of consciousness. So even people that have narcolepsy can't drive. I'm not supposed to shower when there's nobody home because I can slip and fall in the shower and die. I can drown, I can hit my head and go unconscious because I can have a seizure in the shower. I can have a seizure anytime. There's never a warning. Some people get lucky. Some people have a warning. It really depends on the types of seizures you have or how long you've been having them. I have friends that actually have a warning, but they have seizures a lot more than I do. I babysit, and I get scared that I can't hold the baby a lot unless I'm sitting down because what if? But you also can't live your life wondering what if, because you'll never live your life. I would much rather die doing everything that I want to do than die being scared, because you can't live that way. Nobody can live that way. And I try to remind everybody I meet that has anything wrong with them that you cannot live scared, ever, for any reason. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. So I found out when I went to the doctor that day that my triggers are lack of sleep, which when I was in high school, I was a 4.0 student. I was in the student body, I did color guard, I did everything. Everything you can imagine. And when I started college, I did lacrosse. I was on the dean's list every semester, and I still am. That counts for sleep deprivation. Anybody that's ever taken a class in college knows that counts for sleep deprivation. Anybody that had above a 3.0 in high school knows that it counts for studying. So I had to make sure I slept. It's a chance that I'm going to have a seizure. That's more than 50% chance that I'm going to have a seizure. Missing my medication. That last seizure that I had, I missed more than 3 days of my medicine. So it was partially my fault. I can't drink a lot of alcohol. I have to watch every single time that I drink. I can't have like a thirsty Thursday or a wasted Wednesday, and I'm only 22 years old. Now, granted, I know there's a lot of people out there that don't drink. I got diagnosed with epilepsy 3 months after I turned 21. Devastating, right? Only for, I guess, people that like to drink, but I didn't even start drinking until I got into college, really. Maybe my senior year of high school. I know I probably shouldn't say that, but it's true. I'm trying to be honest, trying to just help people out. And I'm not supposed to really drink ever, but that's asking a lot of somebody that's changing their entire life. My entire life has changed. So I've learned to drink in moderation. It's all about control. It's all about learning to live your life the way you want it. And I also have to be stress-free. It's impossible to live in today's life stress-free. But if you can learn to take it in stride, you can do it. And those things, like my top 4 triggers, those are my top 4 triggers. The light thing doesn't really bother me. The strobe lights, those don't really bother me. But those are my top 4 triggers. And those top 4 things are like in everybody's life every day. Most people don't sleep but 4 hours a night unless they have a regular job. Most people drink a lot at our age. Most people have stress every day. Those things I have to watch every single day. I have to take my medication every single day, twice a day. If I didn't have my girlfriend and my friends and my family, I would go crazy. But I have the best support system ever. And I just can't thank all of you enough. So, before I close, I just want to say thank you to everybody. And if anybody has any questions about anything ever, don't be afraid to ask. And share this with your friends. I want anybody who's ever been upset about anything to see this, because you're not alone and you're not the only one. And that's all. Hit me up on Facebook or on here. Thanks.